Hey, what's up, everybody? This is your league champ right here, and welcome to the LCC Network.
So you said you were saying something about your favorite fantasy football memory?
Yeah, I think my favorite fantasy football memory, one of them at least, has got to be up there, is I remember when I got my first playoff win. And that wasn't just my first playoff win in this league, that was my first playoff win in really, well, maybe not by my entire time playing fantasy football, but definitely in this league, is when I beat my dad in the playoffs. I had swept him that year in the regular season. We both end up in the playing each other in the first round of the playoffs. I was 8-4, he was 7-5. The previous year, he beat me in the playoffs, so I was a little salty about it. And I ended up coming back and winning that game, come from behind and won 176 to 175. Like, talk about close, nail
And a
biting
nail
game.
biter, yeah.
Like, can you imagine like a score change happens? My God, that changes everything. Who was Seattle's running back that year? He came out of nowhere. I think Marshawn Lynch was hurt. He had a great year.
Was it the big guy? Um, dude, Thomas Rawls. Thomas Rawls.
Yeah, I think it was Thomas Ross. I had him that year where he came onto the scene, had a great year. So I win that game. Next round, I go and play Matt. Thomas Ross gets hurt after like the first quarter. Was on track to have one of his best games of the year, and I ended up losing that game like super close. And I don't even remember, but
I remember
yeah,
that.
like
I remember that. Yeah.
one game away from getting in to the championship.
I don't have a lot of good playoff memories in the in the LCC. Unfortunately, I think my only win was against Isaac back in 2016. So I don't have a lot of good fantasy memories. I mean, some of them they weren't funny at the time, but looking back on them now are pretty funny, and they stick with you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
especially the bad ones, they really stick with you. Like you don't forget them easy. Like the game against Jordan, I may have mentioned it on the show a couple of times. I don't remember the game against Jordan. I was in Washington, so I was interning in DC at the time, and this was 2014, the fall of 2014. I had Matt Forte, who was like my fantasy stud back in the day. I'm playing against Jordan in like week. It was late in the season, like week 11 or something like that. I forgot, and maybe not that late because I don't know if I was in DC that long. Maybe week 9 or something like that. Anyway, we're getting through the game. I'm watching it. I know Jordan's watching it, and I need 1 point, which is 5 yards, right, for Matt Forte to win the game. The Bears have the ball. They hand the ball off. I see the running back run through the pile, get 5 yards, and get tackled. And I'm like, that's game over. And I stand up, and I'm like, excited. And then Michael Bush stands up out of the pile, and my heart just sinks like into my chest. And I just want to feel like, not because it's the last play of the game. And I know at that moment that I've just lost. And I get a text from Jordan, no lie, probably 15 seconds later. And he says, I thought that was Matt Forte, like in the text message. And I texted him back, and I was like, yeah, I did too. That was crazy. Don't know why they ran Michael Bush on that play, but it's dude, 5 years later. It's been 5 years since that happened, and it sticks. I can see it so vividly. It just sticks in my head. So it wasn't hysterical at the time, but now looking back on it, it's pretty funny. One of
That's
those funny
crazy.
times.
That was actually, no, never mind. I was trying to figure out which game. I think you guys were in the same division that year or something. Who knows? But
No, I was with Cody and Tyler in the that year. We all three went to the playoffs. That was Tyler's only playoff appearance in 2014. Cody had Peyton Manning. I remember that. And he had beaten Tyler twice, or they had every game him and Tyler had played that year had come down to like a point or two between them, all season long, and they ended up playing the playoffs. I think Cody beat him. I played. I don't know who I played in the playoffs, but I lost. I remember that. I didn't win a single game. So it was like I said, man. I don't have a lot of fond playoff memories in the LCC.
I don't know either. I just remember my first was definitely special. Getting That's like a revenge game, basically, for me.
I remember now. What I do remember vividly is I remember turning down a Todd Gurley trade with Cameron back in 2016. And anyone who hasn't heard this story already is going to think it's insane now, knowing what we know about Todd Gurley. But in 2016, I had Carlos Hyde, who was a top 10 running back. And that was Todd Gurley's sophomore season when he was with Jeff Fisher and that trash offensive line. He was horrible. And Cameron sent me a trade offer around like week 6. It was really late in I guess middle of the season. And was like, hey, I'll trade you Todd Gurley for Carlos Hyde straight up. And I was like, are you insane? That's not even remotely close. And now, like looking back, I might have been able to win a title or two the next couple. Like, had I had Todd Gurley when he was playing well, in 2017, 2018, because we didn't have the keeper rules back then like we do now,
Right.
So, yeah. So that's something that looking back, I'm like, I cannot believe that I did that I said
God.
no to that trade. It's crazy what a year will do for perspective,
Yeah. It's pretty wild to think about. And some of the memories, like I remember before we even started this league, Cameron and I started just a random one. And I don't know how or why, but Facebook had their own fantasy football thing you could do back in 2009. And Cameron and I did that with some other people we knew. And that was my first year ever playing fantasy football. I was absolutely terrible. But I remember very vividly, I was on my way to a wedding in Arizona. Actually, I was on my way back from the wedding that Sunday night, and I was supposed to lose that game. And I remember Cameron talking crap to me on my way back. I don't know if he was texting me or he called me or something, but I ended up coming back and winning that game that night. By the time I landed back in South Carolina, I had won the game. It was the craziest thing. I don't know how I remember that one.
Speaking of Cameron, and I'm sure that he'll remember this story. We've tied, I think, on 2 occasions, 2 separate occasions, where we've tied in the LCC, where he's beat me in the LCC, and then because of a stat change, I come back and beat him on Thursday or Friday of that week. 2 separate times that I've done that to Cameron. If I remember correctly, it was Cameron. So you know how he's always so against the stat changes and things like that, and
Yeah.
he always talks about him. And that's why he's been burned at least 3 times, I think, with something like that. But sorry, that just jogged a memory, when you said that.
Yeah, he gets screwed over by that kind of stuff all the time. At least like every other year. It's funny.
Yeah, it happens. It definitely happens. Speaking of ties, so in our league in the LCC, we obviously don't tie, but we had 2 separate ties in the NFL league in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
2
Dude,
separate ties. It's crazy.
I can't stand that, man. I would almost rather lose than tie with someone. That just it makes me so mad. I hate that.
Well, I think it depends. Like, if it ends up helping you come playoff time, though, you're going to be glad that you tied and didn't lose the game.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Just can't.
I mean, right
stand
now,
to
look at
tie.
Isaac. Right now, he's a half a game ahead of you and some other guys because he didn't lose. He tied, even though he tied a team that I think he should have beat.
Yeah.
Who's done surprisingly well with what he's had on his roster.
Yeah. It's I don't know. That's one thing I like, and I kind of miss the tie-breaking rule we used to have, the home and away thing. As I know people hated it because it was like, oh, there's no skill in that, blah blah blah. But I don't know any fantasy league in the world where they decide ties by home and away games. Like, we're probably the only one. And I know some people say, well, that's because it's stupid. That's why we're the only ones that do it. But I look at it the other way. I think it's just so unique and really cool. One thing that I liked and miss that we had up until the season.
I don't like the bench scoring. I didn't love the home and away, but I certainly don't like the bench scoring because sometimes you construct your roster in a way that you purposely might have a lot of players on bye, or you might be gathering guys who are on bye because it's cheaper, or trading for guys, or whatever the case is, guys who are injured. So to not have So to have an opportunity to lose a game simply because the way your roster was constructed on guys that you're not even playing, I just think it's. I mean, I get it. I
Yeah.
guess it's not much different than leaving it up to chance, I guess. But I don't know. I kind of like that. Like you had 6 away games, 6 home games. You kind of knew it going into the game. All right, I've got to get an extra point here if we ended up tying. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just I don't know. I don't love it. Not my favorite thing. But it hasn't happened yet. It hasn't affected anybody yet, so I haven't really thought too much about it. But
No.
the one time it does, you better believe we're going to hear about it, though.
Yeah,
the
this
one
is like
time it changes the game.
yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. You still there?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm here. I'm here.
Oh,
I'm just
sorry,
so
I thought it cut
kicking
off.
back. No, I'm just kicking back, thinking about. This is year 10 for the LCC. This is my 7th season. So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of kicking back on some of the moves. I remember my first draft with you guys. Coming in, I think I had like the 9th pick or something like that. I don't remember. We randomly selected that year. I do remember that. I kept Calvin Johnson, the guy who had the team before me, had Calvin Johnson. Tyler kept RG3, the guy who
Oh
had
my god,
the
dude.
team before him had RG3. I remember that very vividly. So I was like, Tyler, what are you doing? And I remember when we found those old draft boards at your
Yeah.
grandma's house in
Yeah.
Spartanburg, and I think I had picked like Vernon Davis or something like that, like in the 2nd round or the 3rd round, and like defenses were picked in like the 4th round, and kickers were picked in the 4th round, and oh my god, and then like guys like Gronk and Russell Wilson were picked like because this
Super
is
low,
back
yeah.
during like their like 2nd year or something like that. Yeah, they were picked like super late. Um, it's just crazy to look back on some of that stuff sometimes and to see guys that you forgot about, and you're like, what? He was picked like how high? Like Percy Harvin is in the 2nd round. What the hell were we doing? Like when you're looking back, because you just it's just it's crazy how quickly it changes.
Yeah.
But it's fun to look back on that, and you look back and you're like, man, I made a lot of mistakes during in that draft, or
Yeah.
like, wow, a kicker was picked in the 4th round. That's crazy.
I can't believe in our first year in the league, there was at least one team that selected a defense in like the 2nd round of the draft. Like just crazy shit. Because for a lot of people, that was their first year playing fantasy football, and or maybe 2nd or 3rd year. So they didn't have a lot of experience. Not enough to really learn, like you just don't do that.
Well, and you think about fantasy football as a whole too, like it's been a thing for many decades now, for the
Since the
late
80s.
60s, early 70s. It's been a long time that it's been in existence, but it hasn't really been popular. I mean, probably the last 20 years, but really it hasn't been a huge thing except for probably the last 10 years, the 8 years maybe. So I remember, a time in the late 2000s in that decade there where it wasn't really a thing. Like not many people played it on a very regular basis. And if they did, it certainly wasn't the way it is now where they had instant scoring and things like that all the time,
Right.
So it was just kind of a little bit different in that way. And so you're right. When the league kind of started 2010, it wasn't like it is now where even the casual fan plays it. It was still a little more for like hardcore fans back then. And everyone was just kind of learning the ropes as they went. If I knew then what I know now about fantasy football.
Oh my god, yeah. I would have won like every championship for the first
I'd have
at
9
least 5
titles
years.
by yeah.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, God. Except back then I didn't have a clue. And like, unfortunately hindsight's 2020, but it's just fun to look back because when you don't actively think about that stuff all the time every day, but you just happen to catch those memories every now and then. It's just kind of fun to remember how it was and how some of those things went. It's crazy.
And one of my favorite things though is to look at other leagues and see what they're doing and stuff, just so I get ideas. Like I'll look at a league and I'm like, oh man, that league looks like shit. There's no way I'd ever even consider playing in that league. Or I'll look at one, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I'd like for us to do something like that, or at least something similar. And
Yeah.
then you kind of see it. You'll come across some of those leagues that have been around for a long time, kind of like ours, like 10 plus years. And you see there's this long line of history between teams and owners and things that have happened. And I've even seen some. I came across one league on myfantasyleague.com when I was poking around in their community forums. There's one league where their bylaws, they've literally named rules off events that have happened in their league's history, which was so
Oh,
funny
wow.
to me. Like, because you can think of like when Jade and Cameron did that crazy trade, and
I was just thinking about that.
yeah,
That's the
like
first
stuff
thing
like
that ran
that,
through my head. Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
And yeah, I
Uh,
enjoy seeing that in the leagues because there are a lot of leagues where people just redraft every year from like ESPN, like the platform, and there's
right.
no record keeping or anything. It's just different every year. And that kind of stuff sucks. Like you want to build you want to build those rivalries, you want to build that history and that data and that information and look back on it, 10 years later and say, wow, 10 years ago in this week I beat you by this many points or something. I do like that about our league. And then we get some other leagues and like we're in the NFL league in Julio's league. And when I first got in, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this because the roster construction was a lot different. There, some of the rules, the scoring is way different. Um, but I enjoy it. Every league when they're different like that, they bring a different sort of like approach and a different skill set, right? Like you have to be a little more conscious about how you build your team in a league like that. Because a bye week, if you got 2 players on a bye week, that'll kill you, because you might not be able to swap them out, you know.
God,
So
yeah.
just kind of, I think it makes you up your game if you get in leagues like that and they're all a little bit different, and you kind of have to learn how to tweak your thought process as you go.
Yeah, 100%. I've been in that league now since 2016.
Yeah,
So, been there a little bit, and I've enjoyed it. I've got a lot of the things that are in our league now I've gotten from their league, like the offseason waiver wire, the rookie draft, like all these offseason events, because forever, I mean, sure, we weren't always like a redraft league. We were a keeper league for most of our league's history, but there was nothing going on in the offseason. There were no trades, no players getting added and dropped. It was, all right, week before draft day, make sure you select your one
yeah,
keeper.
yeah,
That was it. And then it was draft day.
yeah. And then it
Like,
was draft day.
but
Yep.
yet, like I would be talking about the fantasy season months ahead of time. And now we're here with a podcast and we talk about it at least once a week, although realistically more than that because we're talking about it off the show nonstop. So
Oh God, dude, they have no clue how much off
they
the
have no clue.
show discussion that we're doing through text messages, phone calls. I mean, it's probably another 5 hours
It's daily.
of
It's daily.
every
Yeah.
day. There hasn't been a single day for the last year and a half that I haven't talked about fantasy football on vacation. In fact, I went on vacation to hang out with Isaac at the beach, and while we were there, we were doing rookie drafts in the NFL league. And so literally not a single day goes by that we're not discussing fantasy football, and we love it. And the podcast has been a lot of fun because it kind of gives us that outlet, to do that. Like, and not that we're fantasy experts or anything like that, but it just gives us that outlet to discuss that and see what other people think about it. Sometimes and they don't always agree, but it's still fun to have that outlet to discuss it because for the longest time we didn't have that. We just tried to get through the through the offseason the best way we could. And now we get to bring
Yeah.
other people into that with us. They get to kind of experience like what we think about during that dead time and what it goes through because it never stops for us. It's a year-round thing. you know
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. I
And
wouldn't
there's
have it.
some leagues. I found one league, actually not one. I found many leagues where right after week 17, the offseason starts. And from that point forward, they're doing ad drops all year long. There's trading going on. It's like it just throughout the entire months of, I guess really that's what, December still
Yeah,
after week 17. So like from
January.
December of the really the same fantasy year all the way until August on draft day, those dudes are adding and dropping, doing trades and stuff, which is really cool to me.
Yeah, It's crazy the leagues that are out there, man. There's like it's so hard to fathom all the stuff that's out there. There's giant dynasty leagues. There's a giant college football. Well, it's a
Yes.
pro fantasy, but it's a college football themed fantasy football league, and it's like 96 teams
80
or something like that.
teams.
80
80
teams.
teams. Yeah.
And the rosters are what, 90 big?
Yeah. 90,
Yeah.
90 man rosters. It's crazy. Like
There's-
you have to start 7 receivers, like
That's-
wild stuff.
So someone is starting wide receiver, 56 or whatever it was that we talked about the other day.
Yeah.
But there's so many leagues. There's leagues like that. There's like themed leagues. Like there's like Star Wars leagues. There's auction leagues. I mean, there's all kinds of things out there, and it's kind of goes back to how big fantasy football has gotten in the last 5 or 6 years. Like now there are literally TV shows every Sunday about fantasy football, like numerous TV shows. There's the 24-hour marathon or however long it is that they do in August before the season starts with Matthew Berry and all of the ESPN like football cast,
Yeah.
It's gotten so big, and there's a little bit for everybody, it's a blast. And I want a little bit of that. I think that's kind of why I'm exploring other leagues, is like I want a little bit of that, but I don't want to move the tradition of the LCC. I don't want to take that away either. Like I don't want to take the LCC too far in a different direction, because I want to hold on to a lot of that history and what's been built over 10 years, but I still want to have a little bit of the other stuff too, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to
I totally agree.
get
And that's
into
kind
different
of
things.
that's why I go on like the My Fantasy League forum and just poke around. Like I'll check people's leagues out, look at it. Ooh, I like that. Oh, that's really stupid. I can't believe they have 7 starting receivers.
Yeah.
Like, I
It's
I like to
crazy.
explore a little, just see what get some ideas and food for thought and stuff. And I would say most of the time the ideas I bring back get shot down, but some of them stick, and most of the ones that I put forward end up working out for the better, like the offseason free agency and the rookie draft and all that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't know until I got in the NFL league with Julio that this is where you were getting all the ideas from.
Yeah,
Because I got in that league and I'm like, wait a minute, we do that in the LCC. Oh, we do that in the LCC. And I was like, oh, this is where you got it from. But do you remember the conversation at, I think it was at Pizza Inn? I think it was at Pizza Inn. It was the one in Greer or Spartanburg next to Cracker Barrel, I think, and all that area.
I know exactly. Yep.
Where you introduced
Duncan,
swapping, Duncan, where you introduced switching from a standard fantasy league to an IDP league. And this was back in like 2015 or 2016 that you did, or 2017, sorry, that you did this. And everyone, like the first kind of their knee-jerk reaction was like, no way. Like, we don't know. We don't know. Remember that? And we had to talk over pizza, over buffet pizza.
Over buffet pizza. $5 all you can eat pizza.
$5 all you can eat pizza to work it out. Because you were like, me and you had discussed it for weeks at that point. Like, we had talked about how we would do it, what it would look like, how we would pitch it to the rest of the group. And that knee-jerk reaction, I remember instantly. I think it might have been Cameron or was like, no, we're not doing that. No, like right away.
Exactly.
Without even hearing it out.
I remember Cameron was against
and
it.
Your dad
was against
it. Your dad was
it.
against it. Yeah. I remember that.
I'm trying to think who else. I think Matt may have been against it at first. I would say at the very beginning, the majority of the league was against it, but I was able to I can't think of the verbiage I'm looking for here, but convince enough people, like, trust me, this is going to make things better for the league. With fantasy football in general, forget about what type of league you're in. There's always that random part of it. There's weird random shit that happens totally outside of your control that you could be doing things perfect to a T, but because of the way fantasy football is, and there is luck involved to a certain degree, despite what some people may say, when you take the more intrinsic you make the league, the more aspects you add to it, the more moving pieces, the more you take out that random part of fantasy football, and it becomes more about skill. And adding IDP to it, to me, was a big part of that, because you didn't have these defensive special teams get you -10 and one guy gets them 30. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Just
yeah.
random shit like that. And then kickers. You can't predict kickers. I'm sorry.
No,
The
you can't.
rankings, no one gives a flying about the ESPN's Matthew Berry's kicker list, his top 32 kickers in the NFL. Like, no one cares. They just do week to week add drop. Like, that's all that matters. That's all
Yeah.
people do. And if you're doing that, then what's the point of having it? If it's that random, there's that little skill involved. You might as well just cut it out. It's not worth anyone's time.
So you brought up, speaking of defenses, I don't know if you remember this or not. You brought up how defenses could just go off or fall apart in any given week. There was a rule back in 2015, I think, where if a defense got 10 sacks, you got 100 points. Do you remember this? Do you remember that? This was back. Listen, this was back at the very early stage. So point scoring back then was like, if you got 140, that was a good week. That was a really good week, you know?
Exactly.
And there was a rule that if a defense got 100 points or 10 sacks, they got 100 points. It was kind of like if this happens, you're winning no matter what. Like,
you're winning no matter what
type of scenario. And it happened. The Chiefs defense got 10 sacks. And I think Matt had the Chiefs defense, and he had like 200. It was insane. They're like, oh my God, this has never happened. And then a stat change took them from 10 sacks to 9.5 sacks.
How is that even possible?
It took I don't even know how that's possible. But they took a half sack from one of the players, so it went from 10 to 9.5, and it took 100 points away from whoever had rostered the Chiefs defense that week.
That was Matt, and that was against me. It was
a roller coaster. I remember you texting me, and you're like, "What the fuck? 100 points from a defense!" Like, it was a roller coaster of emotion that week, and it was like hysterical and funny and disappointing to see it not happen ultimately for the rest of us. It was one of the wildest moments I remember from the LCC.
What's so funny though about that is I remember sitting there with Jordan, because back then it was just me and Jordan that pretty much did everything. Like, we kind of built the scoring system from the ground up. As crazy and as wacky as it was, we're the ones that did it. And I remember we're sitting there as a joke, dude, can you imagine if a team gets 10 sacks? Those guys deserve a good bonus. And we're sitting there just spitballing numbers like, dude, why not give them 100? What's the chance? If a team gets 10 sacks, they deserve to win. So we do 100, and then it happens to me, of all people, the one person. And again, I remember hating myself immediately. So I can't believe I fucking did this.
No one even asked you to do that. You just put, and I didn't even know. I don't even think people knew. No one knew. We were just looking at the scores one day, and we're like, "How did he get 290 points? Like, what the hell happened?" I thought it was a glitch. I was like, "There's no way that's the real score." And then that's when we found out that you dumbasses had put 100 points for 10 sacks. And then it got adjusted, which is even funnier, to back down to 9.5. It took all his points away. Oh man. That was so funny.
Oh man.
Gosh, what we need is some sort of like it'd be really cool if we had people like send us like an audio file or something of their favorite memory, and then we could like string it together in an episode or something, like, because there's so much.
This is our 10th year.
It's our 10th year, like a 10-year, because there's so much that other people remember that we don't remember, because maybe it wasn't about our teams or whatever happened,
Yeah.
So it'd be really cool if like people wanted to participate in something like that. Like, hey, send us your favorite memory, and we'll do like a anniversary episode, right, where we kind of recap some of the most, the funniest, or just some of the craziest moments in the league's history. Like the 100-point game from the Kansas City Chiefs defense. Oh man,
God, I was so mad.
that's
I
funny.
was so mad.
That's funny. Well, we've had so we have conversations like this obviously all the time off the show, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted to give everyone kind of just a taste of what that looks like off the show. It's a lot more laid back and informal. We're not in a rush to get content done and things like that. So if you enjoyed listening to it, feel free to let us know. If you want more of these, feel free to let us know. And if you like the idea of a some sort of anniversary episode, send us your favorite moments from the LCZ. I'd love to hear them, because I've got a lot. I know other guys have some. I think it'd be fun to hear what everyone thinks. 10 years into this crazy ride.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been a lot. I mean, for better or for worse, for all of us.
Yeah.
There's been some wild, funny things. There's been some just really cool things that just pissed you off to no end, like the
There's been
9.5
plenty.
sack game, or when Le'Veon Bell breaks the record,
Oh,
like in the semifinal game. My best team ever, the team that should have won it all, ends up getting beat by my wife. Le'Veon Bell just pulls down my pants. And I had to ride with Marie
all
in the
the
car
way
for
home.
3 hours from Charleston to Greenwood, South Carolina, getting score updates from her. Ooh, look, he got another first down. Like, just updating me on everything Le'Veon Bell does to me. It's like if you have like a security system at your house, and the security people call you that someone's broken in. Oh, they're taking a shit in your living room now. Oh, they're stealing the TV. Oh, now they're literally pulling the wires out of your house to steal the copper. Like, that's like,
they're not doing a damn thing about it. No one's doing anything.
Exactly,
they're not calling the
happen.
cops. They're not trying to stop them. They're just letting it happen, and then they're giving you updates while it's happening. I remember watching.
Exactly.
I remember that one too, because I was watching football with Tyler. Tyler was at my house back then. I had the apartment. I hadn't bought my house yet. And we're sitting there watching football, probably playing some Xbox or something. And I keep getting updates. And it's like Le'Veon Bell scores again. And I was out. I think at that point I was out of the playoffs. Maria had beat me the week before. So I wasn't really paying much attention. And I remember thinking, man, I feel bad for the sucker that's playing Le'Veon Bell this week if someone's playing against him. And then I remembered Maria had him, and it was you. And I told Tyler, and Tyler just busts out laughing. And then that's when I started getting text messages from you, like, "Oh, this is actually happening to me right now." That Le'Veon Bell's taking it to me in the playoffs, broke the record by far. Maria, far and away blew you out that week, and went on to the title game where she lost to Matt that year for his second championship, I think. But man, that's what I'm never gonna forget either. In the snow, they were playing the Buffalo Bills in the snow, and Le'Veon Bell just went ballistic. Well, it's late, buddy. I gotta get off.
Yep, it is.
I gotta go to bed.
It's like 12 o'clock your time.
We'll release this, guys. Just if you like listening to it, let us know. If you ever want to join in on something, even if it's an informal conversation like this, let us know. It'd be fun to have you guys. I want to hear more stories. So we have a blast talking about fantasy football all the time, not just when we're doing the podcast for you guys. So feel free to jump in if you want to. All right, Pat, you want me to play a sound drop or you're not?
Do it. Just random sound drop. Throw us out.
Random sound drop? I feel like I've already chosen now. I feel like it's not random anymore. We'll play this one. I know Isaac likes this one. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to play the outro like I normally do.
All right.
Bye, y'all.